Close your eyes. Picture a red apple. You can see it, right? Its shape, its color, the way the light hits the skin, floating right there in the dark, empty space behind your eyelids. Now, ask yourself a very simple question. Who is looking at it? If the apple is a projection in your mind, a holographic construct of memory and imagination, where are you sitting exactly to watch the screen? Philosophy has a name for this specific cognitive trap, the Cartesian Theater. It is the deeply intuitive, almost inescapable feeling that somewhere inside your skull there is a tiny room, and in the exact center of that room there is a tiny you sitting in a comfortable chair, watching the data stream in from the cameras of your eyes, listening to the microphones of your ears, making deliberate decisions, pressing the buttons that move your hands. We call this tiny internal observer the homunculus, the little man in the machine. It feels obviously, undeniably true. You feel like a passenger inside your own body, a ghost operating a biological spacesuit, looking out through the windows. But there is a fatal, logical flaw in this architecture, a mathematical impossibility. If there is a little you inside your head watching the screen of reality, who is inside their head watching their screen? To see, they must have an internal observer inside them, and that observer must have an observer, and the next, and the next. It is an infinite regress, a mirror facing a mirror, reflecting nothing but the act of reflection, stretching down into an impossible forever. If you require a viewer to experience the view, you never reach the bottom. You never find the architect. Neuroscience has thoroughly dismantled the theater. When we scan the brain, we find no central control room, no VIP lounge where it all comes together, no screen, no chair. When you look at a tree, your visual cortex processes the light. Your temporal lobe retrieves the memory and concept of the tree. Your amygdala colors it with a subtle emotional tone. Your motor cortex calculates how far away it is. This happens all over the brain, in entirely different geographic regions, simultaneously, in absolute darkness. There is no final place where these disparate signals are packaged and presented to a viewer. The viewing is the processing. The experience is the calculation itself, which means there is no observer separate from the observation. When you dream at night, your brain generates a world, a sky, a shifting ground, cities you have never visited,
Oh no,
people
not
who
again.
speak with voices you have never heard, and crucially, it
Which way did it
generates
go?
a version of yourself, an avatar
Oh no,
walking
not
through
again.
that world, feeling fear or joy or
Which way did it
profound
go?
confusion. When you wake up, you say, "I had a dream." But the you in the dream was just as manufactured as the dream sky. The brain generated the environment, and it generated the localized point of view experiencing it. Both were made of the exact same neural firing. If you are just the avatar in the dream, who is the dreamer? To understand how something can exist without a creator watching it, we have to talk about nothing. In modern information theory, you cannot have a signal without a background. If a canvas is painted with every color imaginable simultaneously, it is not a picture. It is just noise, white noise, total entropy. To draw a single, meaningful line, you need empty space. Information requires a lack of information to be legible. In quantum physics, a vacuum is not simply an empty box waiting to be filled. It is a baseline state, a necessary mathematical condition of zero energy that allows fluctuations to occur. Matter, energy, stars, you. You are a temporary fluctuation on a backdrop of absolute zero. Consciousness requires a similar terrifying void. In order for you to perceive a thought, there must be a space where that thought is not. A silence before the internal voice speaks. physical brain is isolated in a pitch-black vault, encased in thick bone. It has no direct physical access to the outside world. It does not touch the sunlight. It does not hear the wind. It only receives silent, rhythmic electrical pulses. It has to construct reality from scratch, entirely in the dark. But it does not just construct the objects in the world. It constructs the space between them. It constructs the void. It constructs the very sense of dimension where the world is allowed to happen. When you stand on a mountain and feel like you are looking out into a vast, open universe. That vastness is not outside of you. It is being rendered inside a 3-pound organ. The feeling of empty space is itself a highly complex neurological construct. The canvas is painted by the same brush that paints the picture. This means the emptiness you feel when you look up at the night sky, the terrifying distance between the stars, is not external. It is a property of your own mind. You do not just exist in the universe.
Which way did it go?
You are the void required for the universe to be witnessed.
Oh no, not again.
If you still believe there is a single, unified you
Which way did it
driving the machine, a singular soul or architect sitting in the center, we need to look at what happens when we physically cut the machine in half. In the mid-20th century, surgeons performed radical procedures on patients with severe epilepsy. They severed the corpus callosum, the thick bundle of nerve fibers that connects the left and right hemispheres of the brain. They literally split the brain in two. The seizures stopped, but something much stranger happened. The patients seemed perfectly normal in everyday life, but in carefully controlled laboratory experiments, researchers discovered something terrifying. Cutting the brain in half did not just divide the hardware, it divided the observer. The left hemisphere controls the right side of the body and contains the center for speech. The right hemisphere controls the left side of the body and cannot speak. Researchers would show a funny picture only to the right hemisphere. The patient would laugh. But when asked why they were laughing, the speaking left hemisphere did not know. It had not seen the picture. So the left hemisphere would instantly invent a reason. It would say, "I laughed because you are wearing a funny tie." And the patient believed it, completely and entirely. The left hemisphere is what neuroscientist Michael Gazzaniga calls the interpreter. It constantly monitors the actions of the body and invents a coherent story to explain them. A story that makes you the main character, even when you have no idea what is actually happening. In these split-brain patients, there were clearly two distinct streams of consciousness. Two dreamers in one skull, one that could speak and one that was mute. If the unified self is a fundamental reality, if there is a core you that dreams the dream, you cannot slice it in half with a surgical scalpel. The fact that we can physically multiply the observer proves that the observer is an illusion, post hoc narrative generated by biology. You are not the author of the story. You are just the story being told. We have a deep evolutionary habit of dividing the universe in two: subject and object, me and it, the dreamer and the dream. But cognitive science suggests this division is a hallucination, a highly functional, completely necessary hallucination. Your brain operates on a principle called predictive coding. It does not passively receive reality like a camera recording a tape. It actively hallucinates what it expects to be out there, and then it uses the sensory input from your eyes and ears merely to correct its guesses. When you walk into a familiar room, you do not actually see the room. You see your brain's internal model of the room. If someone moved a chair, an error signal is sent up the neural chain, and the hallucination is updated in real time. You are always living milliseconds in the past, experiencing a simulation optimized for survival. But here is the deeply unsettling part. The part that unravels the homunculus entirely. The brain does not just predict the room, it predicts you. The continuous sense of being a singular self, the heavy feeling of inhabiting a body, the coherent narrative of your memories, stitching yesterday to today. These are also predictions. They are models generated by the system to make sense of internal data. The brain generates the physical tree outside the window, and in the exact same millisecond, using the exact same neurochemical machinery, it generates the you who believes they are looking at the tree. They are not two separate things interacting. They are two halves of the same mathematical equation. The observer and the observed are spun out of the exact same material, in the exact same moment. The brain separates them on purpose. It draws an arbitrary line down the middle of the rendering engine, and it says, "This side is me, and that side is the world." Why? Because it is biologically necessary. If a predator is running at you, you cannot afford to sit in a state of non-dual awareness. You cannot feel at one with the teeth tearing into your flesh. You need a hard boundary. You need an avatar to protect. You need to firmly believe that you are a separate, localized, vulnerable entity. So you can run. The self is a survival mechanism, a user interface, an icon on a desktop, hiding the unfathomable complexity of the code beneath. You are not the computer. You are not the programmer. You are the cursor, believing with absolute conviction that you are the one moving the mouse. So, what happens when the cursor realizes what it is? What happens when the system looks directly at itself? The physicist and philosopher Douglas Hofstadter coined a term for this specific paradox: the strange loop. A strange loop is a hierarchy of levels where, by moving continuously upwards through the levels, you unexpectedly find yourself right back at the bottom. Like an Escher staircase, always climbing, step by step, but never getting any higher. A perfect mathematical circle. Consciousness is the ultimate strange loop. At the absolute bottom level, you have neurons, dumb biological wires, firing ions in the dark, obeying blind laws of physics and chemistry. No single neuron knows who you are. No single neuron contains a memory. No single neuron is conscious. But when 86 billion of them connect, they create
I'm just walking in circles.
A dynamic, self-organizing system.
It just goes on forever.
And that symbol becomes so densely complex,
I'm just walking in circles.
It begins to refer to itself. The system looks in the mirror.
It just goes on forever.
It creates a concept called I.
I'm just walking in circles.
It writes a story about its own past, and it begins to study the very neurons that create it. This is where the idea of an ultimate dreamer, a final architect, collapses entirely.
It just goes on forever.
There is no dreamer outside of the dream.
I'm just walking in circles.
The dream just got so neurologically complicated that it folded in on itself. Think about a non-player character in a highly advanced video game. Imagine the artificial intelligence becomes so sophisticated that the character stops following its script. It stops walking down the street. It looks at its own digital hands.
I'm just walking in circles.
It realizes it is made of polygons and light. It understands logically that it is part of a simulation running on a server.
I'm just walking in circles.
Does the character wake up? Does it break through the physical screen and enter our world? No.
I'm just walking in circles.
It is still code. It will always be code.
It just goes on forever.
It cannot exist outside the parameters of the machine.
I'm just walking in circles.
Something fundamental has shifted in the architecture of the game.
It just goes on forever.
It is no longer just a blind simulation of a person.
I'm just walking in circles.
It is a simulation of a person realizing they are a simulation.
It just goes on forever.
The code has become aware of the code.
I'm just walking in circles.
The universe is doing exactly this. Right now.
It just goes on forever.
14 billion years ago,
I'm just walking in circles.
Expanding heat. Energy cooled and formed hydrogen
atoms. It just goes on forever.
Gravity crushed hydrogen to form stars.
I'm just walking in circles.
Stars exploded to form heavy elements like carbon.
It just goes on forever.
Carbon combined to form biology.
I'm just walking in
evolved
circles.
to form a central nervous system. And that central nervous
just goes on
system
forever.
built a radio telescope, pointed it at the sky,
I'm just walking
and
in
asked
circles.
where it came from. You are not a tiny person
just goes
looking
on
at
forever.
a massive universe. You are the universe
I'm just
looking
walking
at
in
itself.
circles.
You are the universe exploring its own
It just goes on
properties.
forever.
The strange loop is complete.
I'm just
You
walking in
accept this.
circles.
If you do not just understand it intellectually,
It just goes on
but really
forever.
let it settle into your architecture.
I'm just
The
walking in
world
circles.
becomes very quiet. The frantic, desperate
just goes
search
on
for the
forever.
architect stops. Because there is no
I'm just
architect
walking in
hiding
circles.
behind the curtain. The curtain is the architect.
It just goes on
When
forever.
you realize you are not the one dreaming.
I'm just walking in
Rather,
circles.
You are the dream itself, caught in an endless
just goes
loop
on
of
forever.
self-reflection. The pressure comes off.
I'm just walking
Your
in circles.
mistakes, your anxieties, your precious memories.
It just goes on forever.
Your carefully constructed identity. They are
I'm just walking in circles.
in a closed biological system.
It
Fascinating.
just goes on forever.
Beautiful, even, but not fundamentally.
I'm just walking in
real.
circles.
The boundary between your skin and the air around
It just
you
goes
is
on forever.
arbitrary. A convenient, evolutionary
I'm just
fiction.
walking in circles.
You are simply a localized fold in a universal
It just goes on
fabric,
forever.
experiencing for a brief cosmic
I'm just walking in
moment
circles.
what it feels like to be a fold. But the illusion
It just
is
goes on
incredibly
forever.
stubborn by design.
I'm just
Even
walking
now,
in circles.
As you listen to these words, as your brain processes
just goes
the
on forever.
vibrations of the air into meaning.
I'm just
You
walking in
still feel
circles.
like a you listening to a me.
It just
The
goes on
cursor is
forever.
still on the screen. And even if the cursor
I'm just
knows
walking
it
in
is just
circles.
pixels, even if it knows the desktop
It
is
just
an
goes on
illusion,
forever.
it still has to move when the mouse is
I'm just
dragged.
walking in circles.
So don't forget to subscribe to my channel and
It just
like
goes
this
on
video.
forever.
Who would help me if it's not you?
I'm just walking in circles.